Hey YouTube, better late than never, a review from me to you. Strap on your FIM certified race lid and sign yourself up to the Spanish monopolized racing organization for some credit card grip bugtastic review of Madden NFL. Oh wait, sorry, MotoGP 21. Wait, I took way too long. Madden NFL 2K22 and 21. 2 reviews for the price of 1. And guess what? There's a milestone surprise. Now for a bit of history. The first MotoGP I played was 2013. Then I played MotoGP 14, which was my favorite of all of them, and finally MotoGP 2015. Once I realized how copy and paste all of them were becoming, I took my wallet elsewhere, until now. Now that the game has been revamped with Ride 4's Unreal Engine and physics that I originally enjoyed before the patch, I figured it was time to go back into the foray of ridiculous prototype machines and long Italian names. To fairly analyze this game, I want to hold it up to its predecessors, to see if it's evolved. Now for the TLDR on MotoGP 22 and 21. Vicariously living through the screen as a professional racer is a lot of fun, and that still remains now. I've felt that with all the MotoGP games, but are they both truly a leap from any of the other ones?
Nope.
Beyond the physics, they're pretty mediocre. Keep in mind, it is a solid racing game, and being mediocre isn't necessarily bad. Before I go in on this pasta, because boy oh boy do I have some spicy meatballs. Let's start with the physics. They're good. The best they've ever been in a MotoGP game. Do they beat their competitors? I don't know. Just like Ride 4, the physics are very rear wheel oriented. You'll be working hard to keep it happy and from spinning up, which ruins your lap times. You have to be smooth to be fast and not aggressive and choppy. Braking is also much trickier. It's a lot harder to stay consistent with your corners, entry, and exit. And smashing the brakes will make the bike go head over heels and fracture your butt. So you gotta be nice to them too. Both MotoGP 21 and 22 require you to roll the throttle on and off, which sadly means no keyboard. What really makes the difference in your lap time is having a smooth lap without going wide in a corner and braking at the right time to set up the line for the next corner. There are some interesting caveats between the two games. You can get away with a lot more trail braking in MotoGP 21 than you can in 22. In 22, you have to try to brake as hard as you can, keeping the bike upright, because braking in the corner is much less forgiving, and the bike feels much stiffer under the brakes. So stiff, in fact, you can't turn the bike in when you're hard on the brakes. Thus, you can't back it in either, which is what I spent most of my time doing in 21. I had to change my style quite a bit. I felt much more like I was riding on the edge in 21, and being able to trail brake into the corners really added to that sensation. 22 also forces you to downshift later into the corners. No more flying through the gears before backing it in. Curbs feel much better in 22, and you can feel the loss of the front. You have a few seconds to either save it or go down. You really get that Marquez feeling of sliding the bike on your knee puck in the corners. 21 lacks that. Another thing I like in 22 is the fact that you don't stick to the other riders like a magnet. You had to have more delicate throttle control in MotoGP 21 than 22, because wheel spin just happens a lot less in the later game. And through the comments I found out that playing this game with haptic feedback is a completely different experience. But all I have is this 360 controller. It ain't much, but it's honest work. All in all, the physics are probably the strongest component of both games. In most motorcycle games I pick up and play, I can instantly beat the AI at the hardest difficulty. This was not the case with the new MotoGP games, which in my book is a positive. In the earlier iterations of this game, prior to 21, I was able to use a keyboard and 100% brake and throttle for every class. I even play Ride 4 with the keyboard, but alas, they finally made it impossible for me to center throttle my way through a corner, as he was also a keyboard player. In MotoGP 21, I still got away with it on Moto 3, and I swept the championship. During my first qualifying session in Moto 2, a little wheel spin happened as soon as I smashed the throttle, and I realized I was going to have to say goodbye to the beautiful, lovely keyboard. I still miss you. When I first booted up the game, I was a bit rusty, so I set the difficulty to 80%, which was a great start. And during my first race in MotoGP during career mode, I was 2 seconds off the pace at Qatar on my LCR Honda, and I knew I was in for a good fight for the rest of the season. I really enjoyed the difficulty in career mode. It reminded me of my MotoGP 14 days, the main reason I liked that game. I learned a lot from following the AI's lines, and seeing how they used the throttle to become more competitive with them. AI can get crazy drive out of the corner as well. If you have to rely on having all your assists on 5, they'll always get a few seconds ahead of you. Let's jump into my career adventure with Big D D&D. After storming through Moto 3 and switching to an Xbox controller, I had the MV Agusta team for Moto 2. It was a hard-fought season, coming up short several times and occasionally getting podiums before it came down to Valencia, and I won the championship, which felt amazing. I had never been good at Motegi either. I kicked its which felt nice. I had room to improve because this was only on 80% difficulty. Anywho, I got into MotoGP. Unfortunately, I was slow in Qatar, and then throughout the season I developed the bike and got faster and faster. Finally, the championship was coming down to the wire. I was pumped and actually having fun playing. Third in the standings with my satellite LCR Honda, I had a solid chance of taking myself all the way to Dorna's doorstep. Then, a nice milestone surprise. The game updated. What was the Milestone Surprise? A. Your dad came home from buying cigarettes. B. They updated the game minorly to address a few issues. C. They bought me a kitten. D. The update broke my save and f***ed my entire progress, managers, junior team, engineers, and corrupted my entire season and the 50 or so hours I had put into the game. If your answer was C, you are correct. JK. It was D. I was absolutely disgusted. MotoGP 22 was about to come out in a month, and they literally didn't play test the update. If you were one of the unlucky souls like me who wanted to watch your junior team race, you were met with a nice UE4 error, and your save permanently corrupted. I was not able to finish the season either. My entire garage of people that I had curated and hired were gone. My credits were all f***ed, and I didn't want to waste my time with it. So, do I have faith they won't do stuff like this again? No. They'll do it again, and you'll just have to pay $130 for a new game. Do I recommend a modern Milestone game after getting screwed again? I don't know. At this point, it's like shame on me. Even putting them on blast in my Ride 4 review didn't seem to make much of a difference. I haven't lost all my progress on a game in a long time, and putting 50 hours of your life into something and losing it all isn't a good feeling. I even did a custom helmet for each season. So yes, I did go into the review with that in the back of my head for MotoGP 22. It's such a shame, really. The quality control of these games is practically non-existent, but you probably already know that. Did I mention all my custom liveries I downloaded in Ride 4 were axed? MotoGP 22 came out shortly after, and I sucked it up and put on some Blood Orange and some Code Orange and cheesed my way through Moto 3, Moto 2, and put myself back into a similar place in MotoGP. I beat the MotoGP 22 championship, not with a bang, but with a pissed off whimper, and a semi-decent junior team. Now for the big spicy meatball. What really holds the modern MotoGP games back is the fact that they're really just copy and paste of the same game over and over again, with slight differences in graphics and physics. Case in point, let's talk about player features. You've got your gender, a few portraits/heads to choose from, your racing number, riding sticker, gloves, knee slider color, boots, suit, and finally riding style. This is the same as MotoGP 15, except you have a few new boots, gloves, helmets, and 2 different suits. That's it. Here's all the riding styles you can have in MotoGP 15. Oh, and the one extra one in MotoGP 22. And yeah, I know it's the year 2022, but there is no ride style editor available. Motorcycle-wise, you have all your modern MotoGP machines, Triumph-powered Moto 2s, and Buzzy Moto 3 bikes drenched in Unreal Engine graphics. You also have access to some older seasons and bikes included in those. No surprises there. Comparing the bikes side by side, they all feel a little bit different, which I think Milestone did a good job with. My favorites are the Honda, Suzuki, and KTM, and the Ducati for me feels a little stiff. And this will be the last game featuring Suzuki, sadly. RIP to the coolest bike in the paddock. Track-wise, all the tracks from the 2022 season are included, which I'm very familiar with, except for the few that were added between those years of 15 and 21, and thankfully Laguna Seca is still in here. The customization options in MotoGP 22 and 21 are pretty mediocre, which basically comes down to what color you want for your gear. The helmet is the only thing you can really add phallic imagery to, but to get to the menus to do so is a pain in the phallic. And no, you can't download individual stickers for some reason. It really feels slapped together. Customizing your team is also the same way. 2 liveries and 3 colors. That's where your control ends. Okay, graphics. MotoGP 22 looks better than 21. And obviously, the graphics aren't half bad. Lighting looks heaps better in 22, and the dust on the suit here is a nice touch, but there's quite a few uglies. Like the riders' faces. I think they needed someone to go in there and tweak them by hand instead of just relying on face scans. There's also a weird glitch when the bikes are far away in spectator mode. Motion blur makes the game a pixely mess, and well, this. I know I'm being hard on the game, but this is the cutting edge. This is MotoGP. I'm holding it to a higher standard. The bikes do look gorgeous though. Milestone doesn't mess around when it comes to that, but the game's environment and characters still feel mid-2011s. Plus, I want to see damage and carnage to the bikes when they crash. I want to see the knee puck wear and scuffs on the leathers where you end up dragging the bike or hitting other bikes. Also, where are some decent particle physics? Grime on the tracks, heat marks on the racing slicks, rubber building up on the sides, kitty litter going everywhere. It's totally doable. It's 2022, not 2001. Also, many of the cutscenes are copy and paste from the previous game. When I first saw them in 21, I thought they were a really nice touch, but when I realized they were the exact same in 22, I feel like I shouldn't have paid for it. The sound has vastly improved over the older MotoGP games. But yet again, I think they can really improve the sound in many ways. Layering, hard brake effects, backfires. I feel like they could have some alternate sounds for each engine, maybe when you add modifications and whatnot through the trees. There's just a lot of room to improve. MotoGP 22 added a suggestion button on your tuning setup, which is nice for quickly setting up the bike for the track. It mostly still comes down to the types of tires you can get away with using, and there are 3 compounds to choose from. Also, if you're a hard-braking point-and-shooter like me, see ya, Space Cowboy, switch to the smaller 12-inch disc. Unfortunately, when you watch your junior team, all your save settings get wiped and you have to reapply them. Finally, with tuning, it'd be nice to have a new setup system instead of the same one we've been using, like maybe a quick menu. Racing in the rain has been simulated better than ever. It's very treacherous. In older games, it didn't really do anything. You also have cloudy days and some different lighting effects depending on the time of the day, which is nice. There are 4 rider assists in this game, with 5 levels of assist and 3 power modes: traction control, anti-wheelie, engine braking, and power. Power is the one you'll be adjusting the most because the bikes are very thirsty in this game. The usual suspects of difficulty assists from Ride 4 and GP21 are here. And finally, manual race starts. The onboard camera needs an FOV slider or something, because in my opinion, it's still way too close to the bike. I still prefer using third person so I can see where my bike is pointed, because unfortunately in video games, it's impossible to feel the bike underneath you, unlike real life. And there's only 5 views to choose from. Superbike 2001 has more choices as far as the camera goes. Photo mode is still top-notch and uses a similar system to Ride 4's. Another very odd omission is that there is no flag-to-flag racing integrated into the game, which we've seen a lot in the past couple of MotoGP seasons. So what's new in the new MotoGP games? Besides the myriad of electronic assists, the ride height device is an interesting new feature in 22. You engage it prior to coming out of a corner, and it sits the rear to reduce wheelie on the straights. Only way to turn it off though is hard braking, so if you accidentally engage it during a high-speed chicane, you're blowing your corner. There's also a new long lap penalty, where if you go off the track too many times, you have to ride around an extension of the track that is used to penalize you at a certain miles per hour. Also some other new features: full crash and bike recovery, and the new 9 Season 2009, but I'll get to those in a bit. So besides that, not much, because most of the modes existed in the older games, down to creating a team and career mode. It's pretty much just like it was in MotoGP 15, and the graphics that come with the bike look bare bones and similar to MotoGP 15. Different classes existed in the older games too. I will say team management is much better in 22 and 21. You have a contract manager and technical staff, and you can start a junior team, which is actually a feature I really like. It's also a really easy way to get into debt if your riders aren't doing so well. Anyway, you manage their contracts and technical staff as well. They also get better over time, but it'll be up to you if they're good enough to keep at the end of the season. And you can watch them race, you know, when Milestone doesn't accidentally break the game with an update. They often do better if you simulate the race. You'll scream and curse at them when they crash out of first place. On the other hand, give them a good job, son, when they finally cross the line on the podium. When they're doing really well, they can make you a boatload of money, and you can live out your rich capitalistic dreams of having a successful racing team called balls and sacks. The meat of the game is spent in career mode, where you vicariously live your dreams as an FIM racer and can work your way up from Moto 3 all the way to MotoGP. There's some mild management of your contracts and negotiations. You can also hire and fire different technical managers. This is mostly a min-max process depending on what you're working on. Every race weekend you have test goals, which help increase the numbers faster to upgrade different parts of your bike. Once you've hit MotoGP, all trees unlock. They are engine, frame, aero, and electronics. You'll use your research cronies to unlock each little blip, and you'll notice slight differences in performance. And at certain points in the season, you'll test next year's chassis and make decisions on which one you want to focus on. It's obviously more fleshed out than previous entries, but not a real leap in design or all that engaging. Once you've become the MotoGP champion, there's a few things to do after that, but that is the pinnacle of single player. Now for Real Events 2014. 9 Season 2009. A new mode where you have different objectives per race, and each is preluded with a cinematic and narration. It was a nice little post-career mode to dabble with. After each scenario, if you do enough of the challenges, you unlock riders from that year. Another new feature is the MotoGP Academy, but it's mediocre. Does it teach you how to brake into corners? No. Does it teach you how to pull back on the stick to move the weight into the rear for braking? No. Does it tell you exactly when to use the rear brake? No. Do they mention they've completely abandoned the tuck button? No. Nope. It's just a basic tutorial. In the other mode is running sections of the track for medals, Gran Turismo style. I think it would have been smart to have one of the esports champions teach you how to play the game via videos and challenges, since I learned a lot more just looking up a YouTube video than in the actual game. So here's my big fat Greek critique of career mode and all that it can entail. I feel like the MotoGP games have enough of the spotlight they should transform. Imagine this. When you first start out in MotoGP, you have to ride in the Red Bull's Rookie Cup to qualify for a ride in Moto3. During that period, you have to get sponsors that support your race and your funding. You could sign a contract with TCX Boots for that year, and they become an official sponsor that ends up on your uniform. Then you need to get sponsored by a suit company, a helmet company, and all of this ends up determining the gear you use for your races. Each contract you sign with a sponsor has certain goals, and maybe you need to do a few PR events or commercials or something. And then as you race, you fight your way into the MotoGP Championship. You choose a different sponsor and contracts that have heavy effects on your funding and look. This way, you can incorporate the customization into the gameplay. How fun would that be? Kind of like a more enhanced version of the original Grid Race Driver, where you could decide where the decals go on the car, and they would only pay you if certain terms were met per race. Speaking of, do you remember how awesome the damage and particle physics were in that game? What a gem. Unlike this. Back on topic. You could design your own livery too, based on the sponsors you have with your custom team. You could throw all the different suit companies in too, instead of just the two big Italians. You could even start with a truck and trailer and graduate to a motorhome with a golden shitter. You could even customize the champagne you're sponsored by. Champagne. Makes you want to go get some cooks. You could even have this apply to your race bike. You get different oil sponsors, exhaust, tires, forks, electronics, windscreens. You could have a completely customized and sponsored bike that is uniquely yours, and it would be cool if you could put the parts on the bike yourself. I want a rims amount of detail here. This would make customization way more integrated into the game, instead of just signing the contract, boom, done, choose your color. You could even throw in some Toka race driver drama. Like for example, if you have a super big crash, you can end up in the hospital for several weeks, and your mom really upset with you. Sadly, this isn't what MotoGP 22 is. Guess I better put some Windex on it. Let's play feature or gimmick. An advertised feature is a gimmick unless it's fully integrated. For example, remember the full crash and bike recovery? Well, let's talk about that. Specifically, all the way back to World Superbike 2001, a milestone game. This game comes with a full crash and recovery feature in which, in an accident, you and the AI have to get up and go run to get your bike. Pick it up, set a trajectory for a running start to get the bike going again, and then you leap onto it and take off. MotoGP 22 has this feature, except it only applies to you. And there's a loading screen between the bike coming to a stop and switching to your character. And to top it all off, AI riders magically teleport to their bike, so the rules don't apply to them. It's a gimmick. You got that right. A game from 2001 does it better. Or is it just too hard to code AI to run to their bikes? I mean, Jesus Christ, even the Road Rash AI run to their bikes and pick them up. And you can run them over. You can even make rude gestures in World Superbike 2001. Hell, here's all the features it comes with. Do you think you're paying for a better, newer game with more features? I don't think so. Just to rub some salt into the wound, I think the AI are better at seeing you and avoiding you in World Superbike 2001 as well. You can put lipstick on a Dodge Neon, but it's still a Dodge Neon. Same applies to CF Moto. Friends don't let friends buy CF Motos. Now for the AI. I think at this point you either love or hate the Anna AI. They rammed the crap out of me in MotoGP 21, and they still ram me in MotoGP 22. But it's not quite as bad because they've lessened the impact the riders have on you. That doesn't mean they still won't take you the F out. The AI have a real problem with my point and shoot style of riding as well. I don't carry too much corner speed, and they don't know what to do with themselves. Now that I've played rims and watched the AI avoid me, I want that in this game too. On a positive note, I had quite a few good battles with the AI in racing, and I really enjoyed the challenge of being slow by a few seconds and having to figure out my lap times. That said, the difficulty of the physics and AI were nerfed after the patch that brought the new season liveries, and I would take every Steam reviewer's word for it because that's exactly what happened with Ride. I also managed to beat the AI at 120% when I jumped into a Phillip Island race, which made me wonder. On free practice and qualifying, the Anna AI have a really hard time navigating the track and crash constantly. I always see a graveyard of bikes on the sighting lap, especially in Kota. AI are also blind on the free practice laps and will get in your way when you're trying to set a fast time. Same goes with them messing with the other riders. On one of my last sessions in MotoGP, I had an absolutely bizarre incident with the AI crashing everywhere in Kota, going wide in the first corner, and it added up to some very hilarious entertainment, including several glitches, with the bike rotating around like a tornado. They don't stop, I'm riding spinners, I'm rolling MotoGP 22 6 balls. I can compare it to a game from 2001. Multiplayer-wise, this game is the game to play. It's basically the only motorcycle game you can find a lobby for at all times of the day.
I lied.
And this is what the esports people play too. The COVID lockdown races definitely helped spread the word of the MotoGP games to a bigger audience as well. Now I know it sounds like I'm being harsh on the game, and oh boy, believe me I am, but I'm trying to hold MotoGP to a higher level. Because at this point, you are paying for the same game over and over. MotoGP needs a transformation, not a few tweaks. At its core, it's still an amazingly fun racer. I'd be lying through my teeth if I didn't say it's still a guilty pleasure to throw myself in a MotoGP race once in a while. Having your tires start to go and you've been hunting down the leader for the last 3 laps of the race and you're about to make your move is still absolutely exhilarating. It always has been, but there's just so much potential, and I don't really feel like it's taken any major steps. Corrupted saves don't help either, and lazy game updates. Also, the status quo at Milestone is that they abandoned all their games several months after release. Speaking of, after I reviewed Ride 4, the only thing they really added were cones. Also, not a Milestone company, but I'm pretty sure Rims was abandoned too. Do I recommend MotoGP 22 and 21? Nope. Just play the version you already bought. Do you have any choice if you want to play a motorcycle game online? You have to buy it. Maybe one day we could have a World Superbike game. Milestone got the World Superbike license. Anyway, we really need an NFL 2K5 instead of a Madden. Now for some housekeeping. Welcome to D&D Studios. I'm going to be uploading a lot more after the video, so stay tuned. Life circumstances have changed, and my new goal is to get out a video every few weeks. And thanks to you, to all my subscribers and commenters, you beautiful people, and finally my Patreons. You know who you are and you rock. Also, have you seen my Operation Flashpoint Machinima series Wasteland? It's completely finished, and you can watch it all in one sitting. Or how about my Media Millennial Sims 4 series about a couple of losers that's still in progress. Go check them out if you haven't. I also have a fully made Arma 3 single player campaign called Ghosts that is completely free to play. Free! Well, actually, you just have to own Arma 3. A fellow YouTuber of mine, Babs, did an amazing playthrough series if you don't own Arma, so go check out his playlist. I'm also working on a new Ghosts campaign as well. I'm sure most of you know me from my Ride 4 review. Thank you for all of those comments. It's a goldmine of information thanks to you guys commenting. Speaking of that, there are plenty of reviews to come. Also, I got a katana, and it's pull hard. Awesome, but the 2-gallon gas tank is a thirsty girl. Feel free to comment, subscribe, and check out my Patreon. Finally, I'll try to get to as many comments as I can. Thanks for patiently waiting for this vid. Before you leave this video, please comment your spiciest MotoGP hot take. That's all I ask. And if you don't care about MotoGP, how about your favorite book you've ever read? This is D&D. I'm out.